Today, we're going to analyse a really confusing property strategy, and it's called Rent2Rent. The property educators, property mentors, and trainers, along with all the fake property gurus, absolutely love it. Why is that? Whenever we log into social media, we're inundated with adverts for property courses. Rent2Rent is advertised as a risk-free passive income strategy and a way to get started in property with no money. Why do property educators and trainers push it so much? Is it because it genuinely is risk-free passive income and it works so well? Or is it because it makes them so much money selling Rent2Rent courses? If you're a budding property entrepreneur, stay tuned to this video to find out the pros and cons of Rent2Rent as a wealth building strategy. Welcome back to my series Property Scams, where I forensically examine the property education and investment world. I look at practices, words, and even phrases used in property. I explain in layman's terms what the phrases mean and also apply them in real life and tell you the pitfalls and how to be aware of the cons and scams that are rife in the property industry. You will see how easy it is to become a victim and lose a fortune if you're not prepared. And what do I want from you in return? Cash? Eternal youth? Your mortgage deeds? No way. I want nothing except for you to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. So I'm going to count to 5 while you hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Let's check out Rent2Rent and why I think it's such a scam. Here's what happened when this dodgy little guy called Freddy the Furu discovered the scheme called Rent2Rent. You know what a Furu is, right? It's someone who claims to be a guru but is actually a fake, a fraud. Freddy was a fake property guru and made his money selling courses to people who believed he would guide and advise them and help them navigate the tricky world of property to ultimately make a fortune. Of course, no one made a fortune. No one except Freddy, that is. If you haven't seen it, check out my other videos for an explanation of the tricks Freddy and countless other property gurus just like him got up to. There's a selection of them just popped up on your screen, and there's also a link in the description and the comments. Imagine how Pablo Escobar felt when he set up his drugs cartel and established his first cocaine smuggling route into America. He'd landed himself a license to print money. Well, that's exactly how Freddy felt when he discovered Rent2Rent. It was his ticket to a fortune, for him of course, not his students. We all know that property is a hard business and there's no quick route to success. For example, you need a big pile of cash to be able to pay a deposit for a property, and then you can use leverage in the form of a loan. That was a problem for Furus. How could they persuade a wannabe property investor to sign up to a course for a few grand when they could use the same money towards a deposit? A Furu would neatly sidestep that issue and simply claim anyone can be a successful property investor, and the best part is they don't even need to have a load of money to get started. You know the sort of thing I'm talking about. Your social media will be full of it. They promise you things like become a property millionaire, no cash required. So Freddy knew he'd landed on his feet when he discovered Rent2Rent, because they could advertise it as a no money down property investment which could provide thousands of pounds per month in passive income. To understand why he was so happy, you need to understand exactly what it is. According to one property trainer, Rent2Rent is when you rent a property off a landlord and then you rent the property out again. Before doing this though, you and the landlord will need to have agreed a guaranteed amount of rent you will pay each month. Usually, the landlord will rent it out for a reasonably low fee. They will go on to explain that not all landlords want to be involved in this. It tends to be the ones who are maybe reluctant landlords. They don't want any hassle, or they can't afford to invest in the property to maximise the potential returns. Rent2Rent also involves a certain type of property. Generally, it'll be in a good area, perhaps a city centre, but for some reason it won't be achieving its full potential in terms of rent. Maybe it needs an investment to bring it up to scratch, a new boiler, a refurb, improvements to the bathroom or kitchen. The go-between, the person who rents the property from the landlord, needs to be able to spot this and willing to put the work in to turn the fortunes around. One popular rent-to-rent method is to convert a 3 or 4 bedroom property into a HMO, effectively doubling the rent the property can demand. Okay, that's the view of many property trainers when it comes to rent-to-rent. They are the main advocates of these types of property deals, and they make it sound so simple. But what they won't tell you are the downsides, and here's my take on it. The premise of a rent-to-rent scheme is quite straightforward. Essentially, the investor takes a tenancy from a property owner. This would normally be for 3 to 5 years. The investor then lets individual rooms to subtenants. It's normally a big house, and the investor will even convert reception rooms into bedrooms to maximise income. Their profit is made from the difference between the monthly rent to the owner and the total rent collected from their subtenants. Here's the thing, contrary to what a property guru will say, there's absolutely nothing new about rent-to-rent. The strategy simply boils down to the investor being able to rent individual rooms in a property for a cumulative sum which is greater than the monthly rent to the owner. It's no different from renting a block of flats from a freeholder and aiming to make profit by subletting the flats at a higher total amount. The only real difference is that rent-to-rent deals with individual rooms rather than flats, as investors attempt to squeeze every last drop of profit. For the owner of the property, the attraction is obvious. They gain a tenant with a guaranteed income for a period of time. The tenant will manage the property, collect the income, take care of certain works of repair, find subtenants, and manage the various relationships. The owner can remain pretty hands-off. What the property guru doesn't tell you is that the person taking more of a risk is the investor. They're signing up for a long period and a lot can change in that time. They can, however, make a respectable profit providing they have sufficient capital to pay for the lease, pay for the repairs, find prospective subtenants, and carry out the referencing checks. But while many investors see rent-to-rent as a legitimate way to invest, the course of investment can be fraught with difficulty and risk. Investors are often seduced by gurus who make bold claims of huge profits, while at the same time hiding behind pages of disclaimers. Properties can require regular and expensive maintenance. Subtenants can themselves prove to be problematic. All it takes is for one tenant to be late with a couple of months' rent and a profitable investment can become a money pit. Let's look at the risks. Rent-to-rent is not passive income. A property guru will tell you that it provides financial freedom, but it doesn't. You're doing all the hard work for the landlord, but you're not going to get any capital appreciation in the property. The landlord will get that because they are the ones who own the property. You need to work with a landlord who can't be bothered to manage the property. Let's be honest here, that's a tricky conversation to have. Will a landlord seriously consider handing over a property that needs managed to a newbie fresh from a property training course, or would he prefer to hand it over to a well-established property management company? I wonder. If you want to rent the property out as a HMO, you'll need a HMO licence. That means an application to the council and the installation of safety features in the building. For example, upgraded fire alarms and fire doors. There's a lot of risk for the landlord too. Using rent-to-rent could put them in breach of their mortgage terms and breach their loan covenants. In fact, in the vast majority of instances, it will be against the terms and conditions of the loan to allow subletting. When the bank finds out, they could potentially call in the loan and the landlord will lose the property. Even if the property doesn't end up being sold or repossessed, the wear and tear on it will be much greater if it's crammed full of 5 people in a house that's designed for 3. There's a chance the landlord could be scammed too. They might not even realise their property is being sublet. This is where due diligence and regular inspections come into play. So, I've got the ultimate rent-to-rent story for you. I've got a pal who's a landlord,
I wouldn't say he's a reluctant landlord, but I would say he's a savvy landlord. And do you know what? He gets really pissed off every time he logs onto social media because somebody who's been on a property training course will reach out to him and offer him property opportunities and all sorts of things like that. But do you know what? The last time I met him, he told me he'd done a deal with somebody who'd contacted him and wanted to do a rent-to-rent deal on his flat in the new town. Now, if you don't know what Edinburgh's new town is, let me give you a clue. It's expensive, exceptionally expensive.
My pal, who asked not to be identified in this video, so let's call him John, had been letting that flat himself for around £200 a night successfully on Airbnb for ages.
Well, guess what John did? He actually did a deal with a rent-to-renter.
He let him his flat for a fixed £35,000 a year for 5 years. That seems like a brilliant bit of business for the rent-to-renter. He's looking at raking in £73,000 at £200 a night.
My favourite bit of the whole tale is, before the rent-to-renter signed up for the deal, he went back to his property mentor for advice, and his property mentor advised him to go for it. It just goes to show the property mentor doesn't have a clue.
Do you know why this alleged property expert who charges a fortune to be a property mentor doesn't have a clue?
Because he probably did a property education course a few weeks earlier. Once he'd done the course, he realised it's actually quite hard making money in property. So he decided that he would become a property educator and property mentor. Remember, anyone can become a property educator or property mentor. There's no qualifications, there's no governing body.
The property education world really is like the Wild West. If you're thinking about getting a property mentor or going on one of these free property courses, you really need to check out my video about property mentors. It's eye-opening. I will leave a link for it at the end of this video, so be sure to watch till the end. Okay, back to the rent-to-rent deal. Here are the problems with that deal. Firstly, the rent-to-renter didn't do any meaningful due diligence. If he had, he would have realised £200 a night is not an average, it's a peak rate. Some days, rent will only be £60 a night. Rental income is likely to be around 50k per annum, quite a bit shy of the 73,000 he originally based his offer on. The rent-to-renter didn't take into account that he'd need to pay someone to do the cleaning. The cost of that will come off the bottom line. The rent-to-renter didn't take into account that he'd be meeting people at all sorts of antisocial hours to let them into the property. Again, that's going to have to get outsourced at a cost. Legislation around Airbnb is changing. This is undoubtedly going to affect deals like this. And I've saved the best bit for last. Rent-to-rent deals are generally done on a management agreement. My pal lifted the terms for this management agreement straight out of an FRI lease. So, essentially, he has let the property on FRI lease terms. FRI stands for Full Repairing and Insuring, meaning the costs of all repairs and insurance are the responsibility of the rent-to-renter. It's not enough to leave the property at the end of the lease in a good condition. It has to be brought right up to scratch, to an almost new standard. In a nutshell, my mate has done himself a genius deal here. He's got rid of his Airbnb headache. In terms of net cash to him, he's got more money. He gets a brand new flat at the end of the lease. Regulation changes are the rent-to-renter's problem, and the lease is in the name of the rent-to-renter. So, if rent isn't paid, he has a personal guarantee to enforce. What's my take? Well, there is money to be made, but the returns don't justify the risk. You need to be commercially savvy and aware and have a good understanding of the law. There is not a furu running a course anywhere in the world that will teach you this. I mean, think about it. If a furu was commercially savvy and had a bit of wherewithal about him, he would be doing property deals and making himself a fortune, not flogging courses. The only reason furus exist is because it's a lot easier to sell property education courses than it is to actually do some hard work and make a go of running a genuine property business. If you really want to get into property, check out my videos on my free YouTube channel. You know, I won't charge you for anything, and I'm going to give you advice that a furu would never offer. Before you do anything in property, speak to a property professional. Do you really think a chartered surveyor or a property solicitor would have allowed that Airbnb deal to happen? Absolutely not a chance. I want to end this video on a positive note. My mate John will kill me for telling you this, but when he told me about his rent-to-rent deal,
I said to him, are you honestly going to sue this rent-to-renter in a few months when he realises what a bad deal he's done? After all, the rent-to-renter has been badly advised by a property guru who doesn't have a clue or doesn't care. John's answer was no. Both my solicitor and I know I'll end up getting my flat back. But hey, at least I've had somebody paying me to manage my flat for a few months. Anyway, that's enough chat from me. Hit subscribe and make sure you're getting the best advice from someone who knows property inside out, me. Before you go, I've left a few links for videos I think you'll enjoy at the end of this video, so do stay and check them out.